Garbage men of Reddit, what's the most memorable thing you found in the trash? Story 1. My friend works at the recycling and garbage center. He swears they aren't allowed to pull things out of the bins for insurance purposes. I always ask him about it when I'm sitting on his 100 mismatched patio furniture that seems to get incrementally nicer every week throughout every summer. Edit, I want to get in a gunfight with UK Brizzle 1017. Story 2. Not a garbage man, but my dad was before I was born. He's found old fishing lures, a Bulova watch, but most importantly, my dad was the driver who had this one girl's garbage route. And every time the girl would hear the truck shed, get all the last-minute garbage from the house and take it out so she could get a good look at all the garbage men, and she was interested in my dad. She even scheduled her radiography classes around trash collection day, just so she'd be home. When my dad noticed the trend, head off and switch roles with one of the guys on the back of the truck so he could take the girl's last-minute garbage from her and toss it in. This went on for months. One day, the girl's father locked her out of the house and said he wouldn't let her back in until she gave her phone number to one of the garbage men. Coincidentally, this was one day my dad was driving. She took the trash up to the guy on the back, and she asked him, "Hey, is your driver seeing anyone?" The guy yelled at my dad, "Hey, Keith, are you seeing anyone?" And this is how my dad found his most valuable treasure, my mom, in the garbage. They've been happily married for almost 26 years. Edit, wow. Everyone, thanks for the silver and gold. My mom was so happy to hear that her love story made so many people on the internet smile. For clarification, yes, this is a true story. My mom was specifically interested in my dad, not all garbage men in general. And my mom's parents knew it. So they decided to do something about it rather than go week after week watching her stalk the garbage men and never make a move. I agree. It is a great story, and it only got better. My dad used to write letters to her while he drove the truck, and they got married quickly. Since then, they made it through good times and bad. My dad came a long way since his garbage man days, and has an excellent and much less smelly job. I consider myself so lucky to have parents like these 26 great years, and hopefully another 26 or more to come. Story 3. My dad was doing some work at a mall and noticed employees carrying box after box of stuff out to the dumpster. Apparently a Hallmark store was closing or moving or something, and they're just unloading the stock. He filled his truck up with as much of it as he could and brought it home. What followed was one of the best nights of my young life. I got a ton of cool toys and stationery, but the jackpot was like dozens of these funny battery-operated fluffy dogs and these hilarious flying pigs. You could hook them to the ceiling and turn them on, and they'd fly in a circle. We had them all going at once, and it was absolutely hysterical. My parents gave them away as gag gift for years afterward. ETA, thank for the gold, and silver that was fun to wake up to. Story 4. Oh boy, strap in. So the year is 1999. Star Wars 1 just came out, and it was everywhere. As a garbage man in San Francisco in particular, I noticed a plethora of Star Wars-themed trash. Nothing out of the ordinary. Lots of toy boxes, plates, and hats from kids' birthdays, that kind of stuff. Well, one day we're on the routine early morning pickup, and we come across what looks like a body wrapped in black trash bags and duct tape next to the dumpster of a local nightclub. Me and this other guy pick it up together, kind of cautiously, and realize it's way too light to be an actual body, and think it must be a mannequin or something. We unwrap it right there, and realize, holy, it's a life-size Darth Maul mannequin. Score, however, I look at my buddy, and he has a horrified look on his face, and just stares at Maul Sith Regions. There is a massive purple glued to the front, and looks like they had drilled out a hole in his dark side buns to do their own trench run. And let's just say some proton torpedoes had definitely been fired in it. I gagged a bit and grabbed him by the boots and tossed him into the compactor. That was one I'll never forget. Story 5. I was about to drop off our weekend trash at my in-laws' mountain cabin. The community shares a central garbage center, and you have to stop there on your way out, as there is no collection service. Anyway, this guy is about to throw a 55 brand new flat screen into the compactor. I stop him and say, "Hey man, what's wrong with it?" He says, "Won't turn on." "You want it?" I say, "Sure." Take it home, unscrew the bezel, power cord running to the backside of the power button on the bottom of the unit is not plugged in. I plug it in, TV powers immediately. It's in my basement now. Play Breath of the Wild in glorious 55 dumpster TV glory. It's lightweight, so I also carry it outside for football in the fall. Story 6. Not a garbage man, just a dumpster diver. When PS4s were new and red line of deathing people, I would dumpster dive and pick up tons of PS4s. I could get the hard drives for cheap at Micro Center, thank you Texas, and would load them with the PS4 OS. After 6 months, I had made probably $4,000 off of reselling these on Craigslist. Also found plenty of virused-up PCs that I would reimage. I once found a PC with a top-of-the-line CPU and video card in it. The area I live in is pretty affluent area, and they throw out perfectly workable all the time. Story 7. Not a garbage man, but I was found by one. In 1982, This account is not a throwaway. Edit seriously thank for gold, but if anyone else wants to give, please give to SAB instead. Actual URL. Story 8. I was hoping someone someday would ask this. Worked on residential routes back in 80s. Well, here goes. Intact booze bottles, contents of medicine cabinets, lingerie. Herb, couple of bags, jewelry, somebody tossed out somebody's possessions. Scrapped what I found that day, about 450 lots of little finds. Strangely, a lot of piggy banks, few hundred over 4 years. Girls' jewelry boxes in springtime, don't know why. Polaroids of all sorts. Me and partner found what looked like hair dryer vac combo. Buddy put dryer helmet looking thing on his head. Saw a box that came in, breast enlarger. After hurricane, lots of memorable cans with rotting meat and maggots. Military smoke, grenades, bayonets, uniforms, 40, and big gold leaf earrings on top of grass clippings and metal garbage can. Ninja weapons. Lastly, a live puppy. Swung can up to dump it, and something bounced around in can as it emptied. Thought it was bowling ball, looked like faux fur falling out. Then I heard little yip, and there he was, 2 different eye colors, dusty and skinny and stinky. My buddy kept him. So much more I can't remember it all. Puppy was best. Sorry so long. But each of these things at one point or another was most memorable, and at times very fortunate timing. Example, my back or arms were hurting. Keep an ear eye open for prescription bottles and small bathroom waste bags. Pills make very distinctive sound rattling around. Broke after heavy weekend, listen for change. We got real good at it. Hangover, listen for bottles and cans. Some stop for known party houses, toss out full unopened beer and booze. Wow, thanks somebody. Got me a gold. First ever, I'm seriously slow texting. Bit of arthritis and new phone is quirky keyboard. While texting this mess, been having flood of crazy memories. Thanks all. Story 9, not a garbage man, but work in recycling. I got an iPad last week and a new laptop. Plenty of expensive knives, all sorts of kitchenware and appliances, endless clothes, and a surprising amount of toupees. Story 10, I used to work in a very high-class neighborhood. I found plenty of valuable items like MacBooks, 2K camera lens, hoverboards, etc. The most memorable is probably the life-size black male blow-up doll. Story 11, not a garbage man, but I delivered furniture summer of '07. During the height of everybody gets a mortgage. You get a mortgage, you get a mortgage. In the winter, I had delivered a king-size Tempur-Pedic to these people for the guest room, while in the summer I delivered a crib. The in-laws had slept on the bed once. They were just going to throw the mattress and box spring out, king-size Tempur-Pedic, with a frame and a box spring, for free. And since it weighs 700 pounds, you'll tip me for taking it out. Sold. I had that mattress for like 8 years. It was so comfortable. Story 12, obligatory. I'm not a garbage man, but new one. He worked the super rich suburbs of Chicago in the 80s, 90s before Craigslist was a thing, and rich people couldn't be bothered to sell their own used goods, so just dump them. Anyway, these people would call him to come pick up their 1,000s value furniture they no longer wanted. TVs, computers, you name it, they'd get a new something, not know what to do with the old one, and dump it. The best story was the car, though. He was doing his route, and someone wanted him to get rid of a car. Not a junker, a fully running, maybe 6-year-old car that someone in the burbs would buy. Couldn't be bothered to sell it. Just wanted it disposed of. So treated it like a bag of garbage from the kitchen. He got the title, and that was his car for years. Story 13, not me, but my dad. When I was growing up, we had my dad video game systems, Atari 2600 and NES, to play with. One day in the late 90s, my dad brings home a perfectly working Nintendo 64. The 2 games he found with it, Ocarina of Time and GoldenEye 007. Did not realize how significant those games were till much later, but did they make me a gamer for life. Story 14, my dad found a live rooster in a trash can once while working. The weirdest part about it is that there was other trash on top of it. Either that rooster was dumb and unlucky, or someone was trying to get rid of it. Story 15, I was working at the landfill as a student job many years ago during the coffee break. One of the guys who were on the vac truck sucking up blowing plastic had saved a blow-up doll. The rest of the crew was giving him a time about it for the entire coffee break until he stormed out. When I came back at lunchtime, it turned out he had gone to the shop and grabbed one of the industrial weed whacker's metal blades and had charged at the managers in the office. They were able to block the door until the cops came and took him down. He didn't get to keep the blow-up doll. Story 16, am a little late to the party. Probably get buried. I do commercial trash, so all my scores come from stores, some apartment buildings, candy, piles and endless piles of candy. After holidays is the mother load. 1 year after Easter, I brought home cases of Reese's eggs. Also on the food front, you find a lot of chips, cookies, beef jerky, etc. Sometimes I don't bring lunch, haha. Makeup from high-end at Ulta to an entire bag filled with Wet n Wild products. My wife loves those scores. Recently, I scored 9 boxes of Franzi box wine, unopened appliances, electronics, clothing. Also recently, I brought home a huge pile of free meal tickets to a local chain restaurant. A lot of it is sold. A lot of it is kept. Even more is given away. It's a great job. Pays well, is different every day. No boss breathing down my neck. But I get up at 2 a.m. every day. Story 17. Ran a small town dump for a couple of years. Always fantasized about finding a suitcase full of cash. One day, I see a medium-sized, hard-sided suitcase upside down on the compaction pile. Walk up, pop the clasps, the top drops like a rock, and a cascade of brilliant silver rains to the ground, and holy, is this from somebody's backroom abortion clinic? There, all a jumble, was a cornucopia of medical gear, scalpels, bone saws, glass hypodermics, needles, and stuff that looked like it belonged in Torquemada's torture chamber. Turned out to be from the estate of the town's first osteopath. When it was sorted, the then current osteopath sent the stuff to the first osteopathic school in the U.S. in Kirksville, Missouri. Never did find the case of dough, though I did score an antique barber's share, and on a couple of occasions, subbing on the trucks. Was totally amazed by the PRZO, and it was the 80s, so all dead tree variety that notable members of the community were fond of. Spider-Man's suit. Story 18. Not a garbage man. My little brother would go shopping in the dumpster bins at USDA Research Center in our hometown. He found thousands of dollars worth of slightly used lab equipment and oscilloscopes. He went on to apply to the university that sponsored most of the lab research. They are using an essay about the things he built with the lab equipment pilfered from the trash bins. Some mad lad. Story 19. Found in my own garbage can. I was at a friend's and I'd sold him my snowboard. We drive to my house at the same moment my mom is taking out garbage. Out of the garbage, I see my old snowboard, the one I just sold for $100. It was a K2. This was around 1999 to 2000. So a pretty good snowboard, even thought it was a few years old. I get out of my friend's car, and in like, WTF, Mom, you're throwing away a perfectly good snowboard. Her reply, since you got a new one, I didn't think you still needed your old one. She then made me give the old one to my friend for free, since she had bought both. Both were Christmas presents. She is notorious for throwing away perfectly good stuff. Hates any clutter. She also burned my entire college art portfolio BC. I'd been keeping it for too long in her crawl space. Story 20. My dad was working in an electric supply company, and he was tasked with throwing a box into a dumpster early in the morning. He tosses it with ease, and here's if the most memorable thing my dad found in the trash was a homeless man. Story 21. My dad was a garbage man and found a really nice recurve bow and some other hunting gear. I used that bow to hunt for years until one day the glue gave out and it fell apart. Never killed anything with it. Story 22. Found money, beer, weed, unopened food that was still good. Anything you can imagine, really. Hardly have room to keep much because you run out of room as the truck fills. The worst was probably the taxidermy dumpster that we emptied weekly, and an old lady who had started filling cheap garbage bags full of her feces, as well as anybody that fished in the summer's trash. Weirdest thing ever stood on top of at the dump was thousands of bottles of expired champagne from some hotel and thousands of, I'm guessing, defunct toys. Was in rural NW, Missouri. I actually loved the job and was probably in best shape of my life and could toss a full trash can pretty far. I would do again if I got paid more than 8 in HR, even less than. So it's kind of hard to wake up at 3:30 a.m. and work from 4 to 12 every day, unless you're making decent money. It is also very satisfying to start the mornings listening to the Cramps Garbage Man and having the town city to yourself, as well as going on routes and streets that you could literally live next to your whole life and never go down. Also boots that would last any other person. 2 years last about 6 months. Be nice to them guys, gals. I almost signed a contract to drive for 3 years, but got an opportunity to join a band in New Orleans and dipped. Still have a decent enough relationship with the guy who started it, though, and have since moved back to the area, even inquired about going back, but it's still low man on the totem pole of life, pick up my trash job. So we'll just keep rolling the dice. Story 23. Not me, but my uncle found a puppy in the trash that he took with him and fed cheeseburgers for lunch that day. He kept that dog for 16 years. Rascal was a good boy. Story 24. I work at a landfill, so I hear all the gossip. Someone wealthy had a party and threw away unopened bottles of expensive alcohol. A jewelry store called One Time, saying someone threw away a piece of nice jewelry on accident. People accident throw away family heirlooms all the time. Story 25. I'm not a garbage man, but when I was a kid in the 80s, I volunteered at the local recycling center. Things were so loose then they let my 16-year-old brother drive the truck with no CDL. At one point, my brother smashed up the hood and window of the car behind him, trying to get moving uphill with a manual transmission. We only knew something had happened because I heard a weird noise and screaming, and we would go around and pick up the recyclables and bring them in. Our parents praised us for our sense of environmental responsibility. But really, this just let us amass the most enormous collection of 70s you could possibly imagine. We had multiple copies of every issue of Penthouse, Hustler, etc., and raunchier stuff, basically a closet filled with it. Our dad even caught us once, and we had to throw it all out, probably making the garbage men happy. But we had rebuilt the collection in a few weeks. Hearing about what workers take off of the conveyor belt, where they sort my city's recycling, is kind of terrifying. Who thinks that throwing a deer carcass in their recycling bin is a good idea? Story 26. Oh Lord, I'm so late for this thread. But my dad was a plumber and always wanted to get a diamond ring for my mother. One day, while replacing an old toilet in some apartment building, he found a small ring blacked by old age and probably other filth. He tried to clean it with some water and noticed that it started to shine. He went to a jeweler and put it into a solution, revealing a 24K white gold diamond ring in it. He gave it to my mother on Valentine's Day. Story 27. Where do I start? In order, I guess, the load of needles with blood in them, a bunch of empty pill bottles, not the fun kind, and pints of blood, just mixed in with garbage and junk. Okay, the first two, that happens all the time, use a Sharps container, damn it. 100 okay, to just snap the lid on when you're done and throw it away. But actual pint bags of blood, no reason for that. And no, it wasn't from a hospital, doctor, blood bank, etc. Never in my life have I said, bury this right now, so fast. No clue how or why. And I don't want to know, I got vaccines for all sorts of as do most of my coworkers, and haven't ever even done so much as cut myself on a piece of glass. But still, then there was the guy who dumped a bunch of old pool chemicals, or God knows what all in the same bin wealthy-ish neighborhood. And none of the usual meth house symptoms, so I'm going to guess pool. Right before it got picked up, there was a lovely little cloud of chlorine gas and God knows what else. Best part was, he ran after the truck pissed that we didn't pick it up, and that's what made it memorable. Our heavy trucks are really slow until they get going. Sorry, y'all. I know you're stuck behind a truck, but it's either that or drown in garbage. So it was a very low-speed chase between pissed-off upper-middle-class guy running down the street barefoot and two guys that are trying so hard to just maintain and get the away from this nut. So there isn't a scene. Sorry, dude, but nobody wants to drive around with a truck full of Chernobyl. Also, seeing reams of paperwork from failing business was kind of up. Lots of invoices. If you ever work for a boss that just says, just make an invoice, then quit, credit, debit, check, money order, whatever. This is 2019. An invoice is corporate doublespeak for sure. We can take an IOU as payment. Sticking an invoice in a file cabinet means your file cabinet and everything else your landlord throws away when they evict the office will end up in a landfill. You could tell that it was someone's dream to run their own business, but they had no clue how. Sorry to the former employees. You should have stolen all the metal and sold it to us for cash before they locked the doors for good. Because I know while you weren't getting paid, seeing the leftovers from an estate sale is pretty sad too. Lots of pictures, personal things, of course all the good stuff is gone. You can tell the difference between people that took the time to go through and keep sentimental stuff and people who inherited the house and said it, pay someone to come over and clean this thing out so we can sell it. Then, of course, there's always the good stuff, like people who bring their kids out to watch, and they get all into it watching the giant dump trucks drive around, or bring us Girl Scout cookies or bottles of water when we're sweating our off in the landfill. Not a garbage man, but hold on to your seat. I was about 9 years old. I had a hamster. When my parents bought it, we didn't know it was pregnant, but whatever, the hamster had babies. Then all the babies died because hamster things. I'm not sure. I guess the hamster got depressed and resorted to eating itself. I don't know a lot about hamsters, and if this is common. Anyhow, the thing eats its leg, thin tail, just nasty. One morning, the hamster doesn't wake up. My dad sees his window. He throws it away and brings the garbage cans to the corner. About an hour or so later, the doorbell rings. It's the garbage man. He asks my dad if he knows that there's a pet hamster on top of the garbage. The thing had eaten his way out and crawled to the top. But my dad says, take it away, it's sick. And yeah, later that morning, my parents told me it died. I was about 18 when they told me the truth. R.I.P. Hairball. Story 28, obligatory. Not me statement, but my dad was a trash man, and he used to bring stuff home all the time. He's brought home tons of stuff, fans, furniture, pretty much any household item. But one day, he really outdid himself and brought home 4 mice. There was a science lab in the area we lived, and there was something wrong with these mice, so they just got rid of them. I ended up keeping the mice as pets for a couple years. Story 29, not a garbage man. But when I was a kid, I was walking by a neighbor's house to go play with friends. On the top of there was the first Nintendo Power, the one with the clay Mario. It was in bad shape, but I didn't care, fished it out, and brought it home. Story 30, while not an outright garbage man, I used to clear foreclosed, condemned abandoned buildings. And my stint with this job every day was memorable. From my very first day of initiation, new guy gets the next fridge, to my later days of old folks' homes, where I vomited due to old lady perfume mixing with the aroma of her used adult diapers. Yet one day truly stands out to me. The fastest and easiest way to describe the worst day I had in this job is simply condensed into two questions. Number one, have you ever stepped in a pile of dog? Number two, have you ever stepped in a pile of dogs? If you're ever in a situation where you're moving, running away, if your circumstances don't convince yourself that, oh, my neighbors will come release them when they realize I'm gone, don't assume they'll break a window to escape they want. Swallow your pride, be a decent human being, and out forth the effort to either surrender them to a shelter or find them a new home. Even being euthanized is a more dignified exit from this life than starving in captivity, living out your remaining days in filth and the corpses of your peers. Story 31, I'm not a garbage man, but I work for my city and perform the move-in-outs in regards to the water and electric utilities, so I often run across houses that have very recently been vacated. I found 50 bills twice separate occasions, a 100 bill once, compound bow, Craftsman handheld toolbox full of tools, a shop vac, bucket of drywall screws, a nice bowling ball, several cell phones with micro SD cards, recently found a shattered phone with a 128 GB micro SD card still in it, baseball bag with fairly nice softball bats in it. Probably B thing I found was a 43 Vizio smart TV with the cable cut in half. Seriously, $5 on Amazon for a new cable, and the TV works fine. They even threw out the remote with the cigarette burn on it beside it. Story 32, my dad told me about a big double entity found in the hall. Thing was, it looked like a dog had gnawed off one end. They put it into another guy's locker such that it bounced out at him when he opened it. Story 33, while not a garbage man, my uncle worked at the facility they take the trash to. He's worked there for over 15 years. Some of the memorable things that I can think of off the top of my head are DVDs, video game systems, sports cards, guitar amplifiers, and he even once found a brand new Jeep Edition 10-man camping tent. It was a beast. Story 34, not me, but my husband, him, and his buddy would dumpster dive and found lots of useful neat stuff to resale, but the most memorable one was finding a box the size of small bookshelf full of unopened videos, along with a ski mask and a trench coat. They got a good amount of money for that. Another time they started digging a dumpster, it was pretty dark and they see a silhouette pop its head out of the trash can. Seeing nothing but the white in his eyes, it scared the out of them. I guess the guy had a pretty dark skin tone and was sleeping in there. They scared him too, lol. Story 35, not a garbage man. But once on a trip to Chicago, I was walking in a residential area the evening before trash pickup, and sitting on top of the pile was a 1940s radio magazine, near perfect shape with Abbott and Costello on the cover. I rescued it. Story 36, not a garbage man. I was delivering pizza. I saw a bunch of junk in someone's garbage like they had cleaned out a former tenant. There was a small, steel gun cabinet that would hold maybe several rifles. I'm a gun owner, and all of my long guns didn't fit in my safe, and was in the market for a small gun cabinet like this. It was in good condition and had the keys in a lock. I opened it up, and unfortunately there wasn't any guns in there, but instead there was a sword and a scabbard and a bayonet, both old but in fairly decent condition. A little online research told me the sword was a WW2 Japanese NCO sword and an Arisaka bayonet. They are worth around several $100s for both, although I don't plan on selling them. Story 37, not a garbage man, but years ago, I worked for a construction company. We were repairing a huge concrete pit where they dumped garbage before it was loaded into an incinerator. Police came in one day and dumped a metric ton of bootleg CDs they had confiscated, came back a week later, and dumped a bunch of old uniforms. But the weirdest was one day we were going about our job. Then suddenly there's a bunch of guys running around with assault rifles. Kind of freaked us out a bit. Turns out they were from the DEA. Made everyone go outside the pit. Was in a huge building. They then proceeded to carry in a huge amount of drugs from raids, copies of court tapes, evidence from closed cases, and threw it all directly into the incinerator. Story 38, several years ago, I had to turn around to make sure I saw what I thought I saw in the trash. Pop opinion was a mortician's dummy. Story 39, hopefully someone found me and my brother's Pokemon binders from 2002. My parents caught me stealing them from Walmart age 7 and claimed they were the devil. Needless to say, we paid for our sins by an ungodly whooping, and they threw all of our perfect condition sleeve cards in the trash. So many Charizards gone. Story 40, I used to work as a part-time garbage man. Back then, I owned a white pair of Adidas Superstar shoes. They were very dear to me. I must have had them for 3 years on regular use, with me on my travels and other adventures. On the same week, I declared my beloved shoes to be finally unusable. I found an Adidas box in a bin on my work route. The box contained the same model, same size Superstar that I had just tossed, but in black color. Seemingly, the shoes were unused and in perfect condition. I was happy to enjoy life another 3 years with my favorite shoes. Story 41 janitor at community college here. Every once in a while, it'll get empty bottles of alcohol, like a whole vodka bottle, in the trash or stuffed inside the women's hygiene box. I found full-size bottles like just how also you're at a school, lol. Story 42, not a garbage man nor recycle person. My husband and I once lived in an apartment complex. We would often leave used but not needed items on the side of the complex dumpster. Things would disappear so quickly we once timed it. We placed a few items and then walked to our carport in full view of the dumpster. Less than 15 minutes gone. Story 43, my dad was a garbage man for 35 years. The only things I can remember him finding was a gun and cats. I remember he called the cops when he found the gun because he didn't want to be tied to it at all. One of the cats he found was in a box next to the trash. We named that cat Friday because we found on a Friday the 13th and were in a car accident on the way home. The other cat he found was actually dumped with the trash. When he was at the dump, he noticed something moving in the trash that got around the compactors. He thought it was a rat and was about to toss it to the seagulls, but then noticed it was a kitten. We named him Tuesday because we found him on a Tuesday. We are very creative people. Don't remember much else, but I know that he always had stuff. When he came home each day, we would ask if he found anything cool. We had a lot of garage sales growing up, and people were always amazed at all this stuff. We had little did they know it was just trash. Story 44, my dad was a garbage man. He brought home the lone surviving kitten from a litter that was thrown in a dumpster. We named her Lucky, and she was one of the craziest cats we'd ever had. Story 45, I was a road sweeper who pushes a cart along and empties street bins and sweeps pavement sidewalks. Found a pound and a half of weed wrapped in cling film hidden under a big pile of leaves, 20 wraps of amphetamine sulfate in a street bin. There was a huge pack of unopened mail thongs in a street bin. A ton of obviously at least 20. 0 a day in lost notes or change on the floor. Music CDs almost every day, but the most satisfying find was all the coupons found in cigarette packs. When I quit the job, I had enough coupons to furnish my first house entirely. To put that in perspective, I would have had to smoke something like 800 cigarettes a day for 60 years to be able to claim that much stuff. Honestly, though, it was a terrible job, and the public were often cruel and derogatory toward us road sweepers. It was also pretty upsetting, as we often had to scrape dead pets off the road. A lot of road sweepers would just dump the dead cats. By law, we had to report dogs because they're licensed, but being a cat lover, if there was a caller with an address, I would always go knock on the door and give them the sad news, be nice to street road sweepers. They clean up all the vomit outside the pubs and clubs at 5 a.m. when you're sleeping it off. Story 46, flipping houses over 25 years, numerous antiques, guns, entire collections, guitars, tools of all sorts and ages, Model T parts, very expensive furniture, go-karts, war souvenirs. I am currently on a house that some people would call a honey hole. It has been vacant for 10 years, and the old man was a collector of old tools and anything mechanical. I posted a few things on What Is This Thing, but I still have truckloads of stuff to go through from it. Story 47, not a garbage man, just a thrifty college kid, but I was at my local recycling center with my dad dropping off yard waste, and we drove past the electronics recycling lot and noticed a couple TVs that looked in decent shape. Brought them home. One was dead, but I salvaged the speakers and the LED backlights, but the other one, a 47 LG LCD TV, worked perfect except it wouldn't read an HDMI input. 15 minutes of internet research revealed that I needed to reset the solder on the main circuit board by putting it in the oven. So a total of 2-ish hours of work resulted in a free 700-ish TV. Story 48, dumpster diving of the past. An N64, a huge box of games, a GameCube with games as well, including Pikmin 1 and 2, all in one big box. I nabbed it and sold-traded most of the games, and the N64 got a pile of trade credits at a local store. Still own the Pikmin games. Story 49, my godfather was a garbage man, and while now they're not allowed to take things home, they used to be able to. He's told me some of his hauls he's made in the past, nothing too crazy, but useful. He'd have his truck when he would get home full of brand new diapers, detergent, comforters, blankets, a lot of things from outlet malls still in packaging or wrapped in plastic. Story 50, I did a few garbage audits once, and there was a black bag we were going through full of 2L bottles. The bottles all were full of a yellow substance. It was urine. There were probably 10 to 15 bottles, and I can never get that image out of my head. Grossest thing I've ever seen. Story 51 didn't work with garbage, but I worked at a cannabis extraction facility that dealt with tons of weed in trash bags from large farms. I heard stories of toys and used condoms being found. Had to leave after realizing that people were pretty much smoking all that trash concentrated into a cartridge. I called it the hot dog factory for good reasons. Story 52, just before Christmas. Noticed a few loose pieces of Lego at the bottom of a garbage bag while walking my dog. almost walked away, but had a closer look. It was an entire large bag, absolutely packed, full of Star Wars Lego. Took me weeks to go through it all and filter out the random non-Lego bits and pieces. But now, I have a 2-year-old little girl. She's going to have the best Lego set in a few years. Story 53 may be late to the party, but I worked at 1-800-GOT-JUNK as a junk hauler when I was coming out of university. We worked in some real upscale, multi-million-dollar homes. We were cleaning out some dude's basement one day, and I found a shiny stack of brass rods. They were about half an inch thick and 2 feet long. In total, it weighed almost 100 pounds. I double-checked with the owner to be sure he wanted to get rid of it. I drove it to the scrapyard and sold it for $290. Made my week right there.